Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman & Company on the 440 Sports Network. We are presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical here on the program on YouTube at Stillman & Co. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends to like and subscribe. We are loaded today. Former NFL General Manager Mike Mayock will join the program today. Sam Brookhouse from Zoomer Sports. He was their lead draft analyst. He's now, I think, like their lead data scientist. He will join the program. Hear from the Super Bowl, and of course, much, much more. We're going to have a loaded week, by the way. Keith Bullock is expected to stop by here at some point. Actually spent some time with KB last night, and so on and so forth. Again, we'll just keep bringing them in. We'll just keep sitting them down. We'll just keep having conversations, so on and so forth. The Titans have made it official, by the way, with Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. I don't care about that. I do not care about that, and I certainly, who is that over there? And I certainly do not care about, what the experience of the coaching staff is. It's much better than it was under Brian Callahan. The only thing I care about when it comes to experience is inexperience. I don't care if they've got 100 years of head coaching experience on the staff or if they've got 50 years of head coaching experience on the staff. What I don't like is when you have zero experience on the staff. That is when I'm like, okay, this seems like this might be possibly a recipe for disaster. Plus, Caroline is going to join later in the week. I don't know exactly when, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We'll figure that out. And so, again, we will be completely loaded throughout the course of the next couple of days. Okay, with that, I do want to start on the main topic today. And the main topic today is really the idea that I am hearing from the Super Bowl. Every year I go to the Super Bowl and I hear things. And usually I'm pretty good at passing along the things that I hear to you. And I remember I went to the Super Bowl and I heard that Joe Alt was absolutely in play for the 5th overall pick to the Chargers, even though I couldn't understand it. And then Joe Alt went with the 5th overall pick to the Chargers. The one thing that I have gotten a lot here, and I'm not letting it necessarily change my mind, but I am hopeful that it means something, is that there are a lot of people around here who really, really, really like Cam Ward. That even though I think Cam Ward has his limitations, even though I think by every metric last year Cam Ward stunk, even though I think the Titans, if Cam Ward was going to make it, if I was putting together a plan for Cam Ward to make it, not, hey, I have to have a quarterback, so I'm going to draft Cam Ward with the 1st overall pick, so I'm going to then stick him out there because I used the 1st overall pick on him or because I didn't have anybody up better to play quarterback or any of that gobbledygook that doesn't really matter. But if I was working for Cam Ward and I was saying, I want to put together something, I want to put together something for Cam Ward. What I would have done is I would have drafted him in the 1st round. I would have drafted him 1st overall because I don't want those expectations on him. But I would have drafted him around 16, 17, and I would have said, hey, Cam is probably going to be the backup quarterback here to Gardner Minshew. Cam is probably going to be the backup quarterback here to whomever. That's what I would have done. Instead, what they did was the opposite. And they've already fired the coach, which is never a good thing. They've already fired the head coach. So now he's starting on head coach number 2. They hired him a defensive coach, which I'm cool with Brian Daboll running the operation, but I know that if Cam gets good, Daboll leaves, and then Robert Saleh's not going to be able to replace him. And the Titans aren't going to do what they should do, which is fire Saleh and make Daboll the coach if it ends up working out. But everybody else around here I've talked to, I've been like, hey, shoot me straight on Cam Ward. Did they overdraft him? Did they? And for the most part, everybody here, all the talking heads here, all the really tuned in NFL media people here, they've all said, no, Jared, Cam Ward actually, just saying, Cam Ward actually, we really believe in him. Solly was on the show the other day, Solomon Wilcots, and he really believes in Cam Ward. And so we're going to have Mike Mayock on the program. We'll have Sam Brookhouse on the program from Sumer Sports. We'll have some other people on today. But the biggest piece of information I have is there are people that are skeptical of Saleh. I walk around here, I talk to people, especially people I know, Mad Dog stuff out in New York. I talk to those people and they're like, Saleh, we'll see. He's a good defensive coach. Dable might be the right fit on offense, so we'll see how that works. The idea that Saleh's some great leader of men and that Saleh is like Mike Vrabel 2.0, nobody here believes that. Nobody here thinks that. Nobody here's talking about that. Nobody wants to pretend it's none of that. I had somebody in New York tell me when it came to Saleh that we hear he's a leader and always going to hold people accountable and always going to do this and always going to do that. And they're like, all I know is when he was with the Jets, he was freaking soft as a coach. So I'm not hearing a lot of Saleh tire pumping. And I'm not, Dable, I keep hearing, hey, Dable has been a good offensive coordinator before. Dable is probably best suited to be an offensive coordinator, not necessarily a head coach. There's just some tepidness there as well. But when it comes to Cam, everybody here is giving Cam the benefit of the doubt for what happened this year. Everybody here is not concerned with what I call the tangibles. I keep hearing about the intangibles with Cam. He's a hard worker. But I'm more worried about the tangibles, but they don't seem to be all that worried about the tangibles. And I can tell TDG, he is probably not concerned at all about the tangibles. So that's kind of the first thing. The nugget here that I have heard is just how many people are like, Jared, no, we think Cam Ward's really good. And I'm like, what? Really? So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing, this is a tease. I'm not giving this to you yet. I have heard some juicy Titans gossip. About the inner workings and everything, the latest development. I'll share it at some point in the week. I think I'll share it at some point in the week. And the third thing is, I think I'm going to have to go live if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl because I'm just so excited. And, it's funny because I'll tell people here, I was a real big believer in Sam Darnold. And people will be like, oh, I was a big believer in Sam Darnold too. And I'm like, there was kind of an island there for a little bit that I felt like I was on. So don't give me the, we believe in Sam Darnold too. We do I struggle with that from some of you people. But now everybody's enjoying it. The thing I love is that I know that this audience knows, no, Jared's not faking it. Jared was in. And if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl, I may have to go live after it. I haven't decided that all we'll figure out. I'll tell you, there are so many people just walking around here that used to be just such stars when I was a kid that now it's like, Woody Page is walking around here. I mean, we could have Woody Page on, but I'm not sure Woody Page would say anything insightful. But, man, when I was a kid, Woody Page was the man. So without further ado, former NFL general manager Mike Mayock set to join us right now on the program. Joined now by longtime NFL guru, former NFL general manager Mike Mayock. He, of course, was with the Oakland and then later Las Vegas Raiders. And, of course, was with NFL Network for forever. And now you're hanging out with our friends over at Sumer Sports. And you guys, I 3 years ago, I'm very anti-analytics. So I came here and I sat down with your Sumer Sports people.
Yep.
And I pointed fingers and faces, Mike, and I was like, I don't care about analytics. I don't care about the data. I don't care. And now I'm over here texting Sam Brookhouse like, hey, I need a statistical analysis on the difference between so on and so forth.
Yeah, but the cool thing about Sam that you have to respect is he played college football.
He did play college football at Tulane.
Exactly. So the cool thing about him is with all these data scientists that are 27 years old and whatever, is Sam played ball. So
Sure.
There's a common sense element that he can help us bring together.
Okay, I want to start with this. The Titans, they're in a rebuilding spot. Now, we know Robert Saleh is the coach. Brian Dable is the offensive coordinator. And we know that they have the quarterback that they think is their guy in place. I am not as convinced as they are, but they think he's their guy in Cam Ward. Let's just parachute you in there.
All right.
If you were to look at a team that is clearly going through a rebuild in Tennessee,
yep,
what would the way you would attack that? What would that be?
First, I'd question why you're so quick to judge that quarterback that played for a bad team.
Can I answer it?
That's what I just asked you.
Okay. So I believe that he is limited as I don't think that as a first round prospect last year, if you were to stack his grades versus other quarterbacks' grades in previous drafts, because that's who he's playing against on Sunday.
Yeah.
He's not playing against, now he did play against Tyler Shuck and Shedeur Sanders this year, but the idea, well, he's the best quarterback in this draft, so you have to take him. That I didn't totally vibe with, because I'm like, well, where does he compare to Caleb Williams, Drake May, CJ Stroud, those grades coming out? And I think he's short. I don't like his mechanics. I think he too often doesn't set his feet before he throws. And then he's got that sidearm delivery that gets batted down a lot. And at his size at 6'2", trying to throw sidearm from the pocket, a 6'4", 6'5" defensive tackle can just put his hands up and bat it down. I don't think he has any true elite traits. I know they talk about his work ethic and his determination, and that's important, but I don't think those are elite traits. To me, that's not Brett Favre's arms. That's not Lamar Jackson's athleticism. That's not. So I think he can start in the league, but I don't think he can be an elite quarterback.
So you think he's a functional starter and not a high-level quarterback? So
I think he's got the potential to be that.
And I would tell you, when I first put his college tape in, I was skeptical. Guy started out at a small Baptist school and, then had to transfer a couple of times before making his way finally to Miami. I love his journey. Kid was a no-star guy coming out. And a big part of playing the quarterback position is who are you, what makes you tick, and what kind of fit you have with the organization. Like, for instance, Fernando Mendoza. He does not overwhelm me with physical traits. Mm-hmm. But the more I watch him, the more I like him, especially his nervous system, especially in big games on the road with the game on the line in the fourth quarter. He was lights out. Okay. Reminds me a lot of Matt Ryan, both in stature, and Matt Ryan was an assassin with the game on the line. Matt Ryan won 90% over the shoulders. Matt Ryan was a potential Hall of Fame quarterback. Mm-hmm. Mendoza, at first, I was like, Same thing with Cam Ward. I was like, well, you know what? But the more I did him, the more I realized he could stand there flat-footed and throw an 18-yard dig and just hum it. And I'm like, I think I'm underestimating arm strength. And the more tape I watched of those throws, and you got to find those throws, because what he was doing was a lot of lateral stuff and a lot of scrambling, a lot of screens and the rest, and scrambling and making plays like a backyard guy. But within that, you could find throws that are NFL throws. And I would tell you that his arm talent is really good. It's as good or better than some of the guys you said he's not as good as. Arm talent is important. It's not critical overall deciding factor, but it's important. He's a good athlete. He bought a lot of time in college, finding time to throw the football. He's a good athlete. Is he dynamic like some of those guys? No. Neither is Mendoza, neither is Drake May dynamic. They're both, but Drake May's a really good athlete. Mm-hmm. So the more I watched Cam Ward, the more in college I was like, this kid does have the physical traits to play at a high level, and I like his journey, and I like his nervous system, because he went from college to playing in the big time, and he basically carried Miami on his back for a season. So that's my background on him.
Sure.
Now go to this year, and I didn't see a whole lot of Tennessee, but what I saw was kind of what I saw in college, was a guy that has a lot of physical traits, got a big arm, has a lot to learn about the game of football. But, for instance, Caleb Williams. I saw a lot of Caleb Williams in what I saw in Cam Ward this year, in year one. Caleb Williams, year one. Mm-hmm. Okay? When all of a sudden Ben Johnson comes in and is able to get what he wants out of him, demands a different level. Okay, and all of a sudden, Caleb Williams, you can start to see who he's going to become. and he has a chance to be elite, my opinion. Same with Cam Ward. He's got Brian Daboll now. Okay, we'll see what happens there. But I think if he gets in a system with an infrastructure that protects him, where they can run the ball, they can play some defense, play action, get him on the move a little bit, get the most out of him where the fit is right. Like, you tell me, you look at the wide receivers. I mean,
terrible.
Calvin Ridley is a really gifted kid that you don't know who he is from, let alone year to year, from game to game.
Sure, and he got hurt too.
Yeah, but who is he in his career? Ups, downs. Like, he's a talented kid. They had 2 fourth-round draft picks last year. The kid from Stanford, he's a big-bodied kid. He made some catches. But they got to upgrade that, right?
Sure.
I mean, the offensive line has got to be the offensive line's solid for a team that won that, and you got to keep your players. You got to get a little better maybe on the inside. But they got to continue to support this kid, both at tight end and wide out, and bring some talent in and be able to run the football. So I'm a little different with you, the way I look at Cam Ward.
Okay, from a general manager perspective.
Yeah.
Would you have rather traded? I think the reported offer was the Giants offered their 1 and their 2 last year and their 1 and their 2 this year to move up from 3 to 1 to get Cam. Would you rather have those picks and sign a veteran quarterback like Sam Darnold last year to build the team?
See, that's a media way of say, in the real world, Sam, you can chase like Sam Darnold, but you got a 1 in 5 chance of getting him. And at the end of the day, you don't ever pass up on a kid that you believe in your building is going to be a franchise quarterback.
See, that's the difference between me and the Titans. Because with Sam, they could have worked out a deal with Minnesota where Minnesota tags him and then trades him. But I just don't believe. I believe that for Cam.
Why do you think they could make that deal? I hate it when people say that, because it's like people say, well, Mike, why didn't you just trade down from 4? I'm like, well, I called the whole freaking league and nobody wanted that pick. That's why you can't do it.
When you took Cleveland Farrell?
Correct. Okay. So if you can't move down, or in the case you just made, there's other teams that wanted to talk to Sam Darnold, not just Tennessee.
But nobody wanted to trade with Minnesota, or else Minnesota would have
How
traded.
do you know what John Schneider would or wouldn't have done?
Well, he didn't trade with Minnesota at that point.
It doesn't matter.
So you think that he would have traded? Schneider liked him so much that if Tennessee was interested, then that may have changed the dynamic of the chase.
I think in general, in the media, we don't talk enough about understanding what the other potential possibilities are. And we just say, why didn't he do that? Why didn't he do that? And I would tell you, I mean, if you look at the 2 teams in the Super Bowl this year, both general managers were unbelievable, the jobs they did. You look at Elliott Wolf, and what the head coaches get a lot of credit, but those 2 GMs were lights out.
What do you think the Titans need to do to support Cam Ward? If you were in that chair, would you be thinking, hey, I need to build a defense, and we're going to run the football and we're going to ease him in? Or would you say, you know what, I got the 4th pick. I'm going to go receiver. I want to give him weapons. I want to give him ammunition on offense. Daboll's in his coordinator. What would your plan be?
I don't know what it is yet, because you got to get all the facts in on the draft, but the common sense way to approach it philosophically is defensively, well, you're not really scaring anybody off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You need somebody breathing fire coming off the edge.
Like Max Crosby.
Well, if you, yeah, but Max,
who you?
Yeah. I love Max. Max is an amazing dude. You could trade for Max. You could draft a kid. What's your corner situation? I mean, you paid Snead a bunch of money, and he's been a 2-year bust, and the rest of that room is not any good. So the 2 most important positions on defense, you're lacking: edge and corner. That's a big hole, right? Offensively, again, wideouts. What are you doing there? Is that a place you can attack in free agency? Can you get a high level or 2 in free agency? What's the tight end room look like? I think your tight end is going to be a free agent this year.
Yep.
So all those pieces have to fit together. You can't just sit there and say at 4, we're going to take this guy, or you got to play through free agency, try to protect yourself. I don't know how much money they have cap-wise coming up, but you have to protect yourself in free agency prior to entering the draft. So you have no glaring needs, but then you can go out and get the best player on the board at that point. And I think too many teams, including when I was with the Raiders, the mistakes we made were reaching at positions of need.
Floyd used to tell me about the free agency board and the draft board and how you had to know, hey, I can get this in free agency before you go and attack the draft.
Correct.
Speaking of the draft, you guys got a show coming up, Sumer Sports. I know you guys are very, very excited for it. I'm excited for it because people, you trust me, Mike, when it comes to me and former general managers, Stopsky will tell you, I listen to the former general managers because the former general managers have made the mistakes so that these new general managers that have never done it before, they go in there and they make mistakes because they don't know better because they haven't made them, but the former general managers have, and they know how to avoid the landmine. So tell us about this show.
It's called The Evaluation, and it debuts Thursday the 12th, and we're going to start with quarterbacks, okay? And then each week we're going to have a different position. And I want you to kind of imagine the old school, like Floyd or me, old school guys that grind tape, and we've got 25 to 35 scouts working for Sumer that have over 500 NFL years of experience. Think about that. Old school experience meets new school AI 27-year-old data scientists.
Sam Brookhouse.
Sam, throw them all in a room. What do you get? And that's what this show is going to kind of be. Like, this is really what's going on in NFL buildings now because analytics is playing a bigger role. But how do you do it intelligently? What kind of cross-check can it be position by position? And then we're going to bring in former Hall of Fame type players. I mean, I interviewed Howie Long. I interviewed Luke Kuechly, Max Crosby. I mean, so at each level, and what I got chill bumps from was I asked 4 guys that are Hall of Fame worthy former players, their take on instincts. Like, when did you develop them? How did you develop them? Mm-hmm. When did you learn to trust your instincts? The answers gave me goosebumps. And there's a common denominator in there, and I think people are going to love it.
Mike, good to see you, man.
Jared, thanks, brother.
Thanks for stopping by. Sumer Sports, again, check it out. You know, I love Sumer Sports, even though I used to get on them all the time about analytics. We continue here from the Super Bowl. Okay, so count one in Mike Mayock, man. Very hard on me on the Cam Ward stuff, for whatever that's worth. By the way, let me say this when it comes to the, well, you know, you couldn't get Sam Darnold, and I had limited time with Mike, so I didn't want to push too hard because I wanted to move on to the next thing. But the Titans have not argued with me that, oh, we couldn't have gotten Sam Darnold. So for all you people out there that are like, oh, Jared, Sam wouldn't have wanted to come here, or, oh, Jared. Now, Mayock brings up a point that maybe John Schneider would have gotten off his ass, and there would have been a bidding war for for Sam Darnold if the Titans had shown interest at the combine or whatever. But since nobody did show interest, and I know the Titans didn't have any interest in Sam Darnold, I have a hard time believing that that's the story. I struggle with that. But that's a point made that a lot of people like to parrot, which I don't totally believe in. Okay, Sam Brookhouse set to join us coming up. Sumer Sports. He is the lead data scientist for Sumer Sports. I'm going to ask him, what do the numbers, what does the analytics, what does the data, what does the AI, what does all the bullshit, what does that tell us about the Titans and Cam Ward? Here's Sam Brookhouse. Out here at Radio Row at Super Bowl 60, and we are joined by Sam Brookhouse, the senior data scientist. Did I get it right this time?
Nailed it.
The senior data scientist at Sumer Sports. And so you guys are the nerds. You come on the show. You came on the show last year at the Super Bowl, and I sat down with you, and I was like, all right, nerd, tell me what's what. And I actually enjoyed it. You came on the Friday of the draft, and I have to say, the reason that I want you on this program is not only do I think it's fun to have you on here, but last year you sat down and you said, our numbers say Cam Ward, not that good. Our numbers say Shedeur Sanders, not that good. Our numbers say Jackson Dart might be okay. And Jackson Dart of the young quarterbacks was probably the best,
right?
You know, in theory. So I then had you on the next day after the draft, after the Thursday of the draft before Friday. The Titans were picking at 35, and we were talking about Nick Emanwari, and you were like, Nick Emanwari is a Ward Daddy safety. He is so your information, in my opinion, is good. And for some reason, that's why I like you on the show. And apparently Matt Stopsky told me when I said you were coming on, he said, oh my God, Sam Brookhouse loves going on your show.
Look, I'm converting you, man, which look, I love it, but I love coming on your show because a lot of times with the data, people just want to accept it and not test it. And the reality is last year looked good in the data. You know, we had Jackson Dart as a guy who was a very productive player. You know, his kind of data profile was that he's first read in Dart. Brian Daboll, now of the Tennessee Titans, put him in a situation where he could either hit that first read or scramble a little bit. He was pretty successful. And even Warren, man, I mean, he's been a good player. Ironically, like he was a coverage guy in college.
Mm-hmm.
This year, they've utilized him in coverage. Has he been excellent in coverage? Not really, but that defense utilizes him in a way where he can be that big nickel who can utilize the coverage skills and not really be too bad of a weak link. So, you know, I'm glad the data's showing some cool stuff. So I'm glad to bring some today.
What'd I tell you? Nerd. Okay, let's start. Robert Saleh, up, down. What do you think as the next head coach of the Titans?
Like if you're doing the volume dial and you move it a little bit up just so you can hear a little bit better, I think that's what this is. I think he was a floor raiser at the Jets in a situation where Zach Wilson was not a good quarterback, and I think that's shown by his time in Miami where he gets jumped by Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers ends up winning some games for Mike McDaniel. I don't know if he's going to be a quarterback in this league moving forward, so I do think the quarterback situation that he was fed with Rodgers tearing his Achilles as well was not good, and it's hard to win in this league when you're trying to scramble to win games as quarterback. That being said, they were in and around the playoffs, like sort of. They were winning 7-ish, 8, 6 games. So I do think this is a floor-raising move, particularly for a defense that is centered around Cedric Gray and Jeffrey Simmons. So you have two guys that you can trust there, and I think he's going to maximize that. The problem is, what is that offense going to look like? And I think it's a very similar slight positive for Brian Daboll as well. Like I said, Brian Daboll put Jackson Dart in a position where he could win. He put Daniel Jones in a position where they make the playoffs. He developed Malik Neighbors, developed Scatterbo, developed all these other guys. It didn't end up working out in New York, I think, because of some off-the-field stuff that he is no longer in charge of. And I think Robert Saleh does do a good job of handling those kind of more team management type stuff. So I think this blend, even though it is kind of a retread head coach or retread offensive coordinator, I think the proper blend of what the Titans need, I wouldn't call it a home run, but I call it like a good single when you need it.
How much of a good coordinator is Brian Daboll? Because to your point, I don't know what happened with the Jets. I think Joe Shane kind of sucks. I think he's kind of a dope. I watched that Hard Knocks series, and I just, I used to work with the general manager, and I just feel like there are core principles there. But I felt like some of the head coaching stuff, maybe Brian Daboll struggled at with the Giants, but he was really good with Josh Allen in Buffalo. So how do you guys, when you look at the data and you take a guy who was a head coach and you make him a coordinator, how do you assess that?
I think when you look at him as a play caller, you're trying to get a sense of where those offenses line up with respect to the talent. Were they certified good offenses? Is he a Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay class where you're just going to have a good offense? I don't think quite so. I think the data shows that out. Is he a guy who has shown an ability to win slightly over expected? I do think so. And I think the key element is we have seen Daboll work with multiple quarterbacks. All of them look better after he left to a certain degree. You look at Daniel Jones, I think a lot of injuries really played a component in that. And I think that's why the Colts took a downturn this year as well. You do look at that. I am a little easier on Joe Shane. I think you're mentioning more of the interpersonal stuff. You look at the drafts. He drafted good players.
Did he?
I mean, okay, so you have Jackson Dart, which I think was
Neal.
Evan Neal was a miss. Andrew Thomas was an all-pro.
But he didn't draft Andrew Thomas. Dave Gettleman did.
Yeah, Dave Gettleman did. But you look at the process, I think, was there. Malik Neighbors looks good. The Brian Burns trade, I think, worked out. Carter, I think, was a good player, maybe a little immature, which does that go back to Shane or Daboll? I don't know, but sure. I thought he was a good player. Some of the moves he made with the linebackers, good. And so I do think he set them up for success. I would have actually been okay if they would have kept both of them this year. And as I said, I think, like you mentioned, the off-the-field stuff is the reason why Brian Daboll is not the coach. And when you have a team that's not winning games, it's just difficult to manage all that stuff. And so I understand why the Giants did what they did, but I also understand why I think Daboll is in a much better scenario as an offense coordinator with a young quarterback and the assets at least to go get better players at various positions. I think this could be a good scenario.
Okay, what does the data say about Cam Ward? Titans fans tell me Cam Ward is for sure a slam dunk, can't miss franchise quarterback. They say this year he proved it. Team sucked, which is fair. Coach sucked, which is fair. But, I mean, he was dead last in QBR in the NFL. He won 3 games as a starting quarterback. Now he's injured. I mean, he did have a couple of good games. He played well against the Chiefs. He played well against the Seahawks. But I don't think he's very accurate. I'm not convinced he's very good. What's your take on Cam Ward? I say your take. What does the data tell us about Cam Ward?
So here's the good news, or the news. He was an average rookie starting quarterback that was drafted in the first round. Here's the bad news. The other average is like Mitchell Trubisky. And so I am not ready. I'm on your side. I am not ready to say he's a franchise quarterback. But then again, we weren't ready to say Caleb Williams was a franchise quarterback last year. So I think you really try to break it down and you get a sense of what he showed this year. And I think I struggle to say that the tape looked better than the numbers, because using our artificial intelligence, which compares the tape to basically a decade of other tape in a fairly process-based manner.
Wait a minute, hold on. How does that happen?
Yeah.
Because when you brought up tape, I know, like, you played college football.
Right.
You played at Tulane. So you know football to a certain extent. But then you say, at Sumer Sports, our AI data analyzes the tape, and it compares it with tape over the last 10 years. How the fuck is that possible?
So we have these scouting evaluations, right, of play-by-play, what a player is doing. And what we've found is we can approximate those over the years in a manner that looks at the relationships between all the players and how they're moving on the field, and using that infrastructure, which is ironically the same thing that kind of builds up ChatGPT, of it's looking at the relationship between all the words and how that builds a story. You can tell that story in football as well. And so based on Cam Ward moving around the field, throwing the ball, the relationship between him and the running back, the offensive line, the wide receivers, we viewed him as a rotational starter, more of a backup this year, which again is an average rookie quarterback.
Which is like Mitch Trubisky.
Which is like Mitch Trubisky. And I think if you say that you watched the film and he showed these traits, I think that's more of an evaluation of what he can do in the future than what he did do in the aggregate over the season. So that's not saying you won't be a franchise quarterback. That's not saying he won't develop. I'm saying that we are sitting in a position where it is as likely for him to be a backup in this league as it is for him to be, like a guy who starts, a guy who gets a second contract. I think we're solidly in the middle of that, and we don't know which way that kind of weights of justice is going to turn.
Is that bad? Like, does that compare to Caleb, Drake, or Jaden last year? Because I'm convinced that when you take a quarterback number one, everybody will sit there and say, they'll compare him to all the other number ones. They'll just assume that he has the same talent that the other number one quarterbacks have. So Cam goes number one, and his talent is more J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix level.
Right.
But it's a weaker draft class, so he goes number one. It's not Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May level. And yet, once he gets drafted, it's look at Jaden Daniels, look at Drake May, look at Caleb Williams. You brought up Caleb Williams. This time last year, was the data bad for Caleb Williams and Drake May?
It was bad for Caleb Williams.
Like Cam Ward bad?
It was very similar, I'd say. I think the only difference was Caleb Williams did not have a high interception rate, which Cam Ward kind of did. It kind of evened out towards the end of the season, but Caleb really did not have a high interception rate, which is very ironic because now you go into a better offense where he looks better and he's actually throwing more interceptions, which is, it's a confusing nature of the data, particularly because he's pushing the ball deep down the field on third down.
Do you understand why he's throwing more interceptions?
Yeah, he's throwing the ball deeper down the field on third down.
Okay.
His ADOT was extremely low last year, and they kind of moved it to a position where if it was third and long, it was Caleb time. And so you get the plays like you get when they end up sending it to overtime where he's scrambling back and he throws it deep. But you also get the plays where earlier on in the game, it's third down, he just chunks it deep, it ends up getting picked off. So it was selective, and we saw that in particular with Josh Allen 2 years ago, where a lot of people were in the data community were like, he's the MVP, he's not actually losing he's not losing production on his interceptions. That was very similar. So just a little nuance of the data, but I think Cam Ward is in a similar position as Caleb Williams, where I for one looked at the Bears this year and viewed them as a 6 or 7 win team. And if you look at their point differentials and you look at the game, how they won the games with these weird cold weather games that they've won, you look at a game won by a field goal, a game won in the last second, they actually would project to be next year a 6 or 7 win team. They're in a similar situation as the Panthers, for example. They just got caught so many of those breaks over the course of the season, stayed healthy on the back end, that team then becomes, a high seed in the NFC. So I do think that they are in a similar position as the Bears were. The problem is you're bringing in a play caller who has never been in a situation where we didn't know what they had on offense, and then all of a sudden they were a top 5 offense. I do think Ben Johnson, at the time of hire, showed that he was a coffee bean of an offensive play caller where he can come into a scenario and get the most out of it. I'm not quite sure Brian Daboll has showed that, but Brian Daboll has shown the ability to develop guys. So that's why I'm more like, it's a +1 rather than a -1. Where with Ben Johnson, the concerns were more about the roster, but I figured that he was going to use motion and play action, all this other stuff to get the most out of whatever talent he had.
Okay, so now let's look at the draft. Titans are picking 4th.
Yep.
And if they had the pick for Fernando Mendoza, I think there would have been a huge trade-out possibility.
Yep.
I don't think there is at number 4. I think it's going to be like the Patriots last year, who had to stick there and pick Will Campbell, who I think is a guard, not a tackle. But I guess it's worked out for him. So at 4, the Titans desperately need a game changer at receiver, and they desperately need a game changer as an edge rusher. What you know of this draft, what you know of Robert Saleh, what you know of Brian Daboll, which path do you think they're likely to go with the 4th pick? And I think some of this too matters about what the rest of the draft has. So if you think you can get a receiver at the top of the 2nd round and you feel like there's going to be a lot of receivers there to pick from, then I think you maybe go edge, like a Reuben Bain type player. If you think that there's going to be a lot of edge rushers at the top of the 2nd round, then maybe you go receiver. Those 2 positions, how do you see them shaking out in the draft, and what would your advice to the Titans?
You're starting to sound like a data guy a little bit discussing the draft.
That's not a data. That's look at the board. How many receivers are there? Oh, there's 9 receivers. Okay. How many edge rushers? There's 3 receivers. Okay, well, we better take an edge rusher.
So here's the reason why, is because the logic that you just outlined is the core logic of trading back. It's that if you're setting apart these tiers and where these runs are going to occur, in the subjective mind, those the difference between 2 years ago, Neighbors, Harrison, Rome Odunze, seemed like it was a gulf between Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy. In reality, you start stack ranking them and you're like, okay, well, Ladd McConkey's actually a little better, and Xavier Legette's a little worse, like substantially worse, but Rome Odunze is kind of in the middle somewhere, and it's actually not as far as you would expect it to be. And I think the Titans are in an interesting position where they can take advantage of that, because there's 2 positions that I believe, given what I've seen at the Senior Bowl, given what I saw during the season, that there's going to be runs at. I think that's the tackle position, and I think that is the wide receiver position to a certain degree. I think the wide receivers are actually a little, so let me edit that. It's really going to be the edge rushing position, because I think there's 4, depending on how you look at it, edge rushers that probably will go in the top 10, and I think some of those might get pushed up. Bain, David Bailey, who's like seen a big push up since the season, Mesidor out of Miami, and then Falk out of Auburn. So you look at those 4 guys, and there's really not a clear 5th. And so I think in the mind, you're like, I have to get one of those 4 guys. I don't think the Titans are necessarily in a position where they're like, we have to grab an edge rusher. So you may be able to take advantage of a team who thinks they have to get Bain or they have to get Mesidor.
I think they have to get an edge rusher.
So do you think that would be their number 1 priority? I think their number 1 priority would be wide receiver. So I think the case for sticking.
Well, the way I look at it is, if they can get a wide receiver, I think their 2nd pick is 34th. If they can get a wide receiver at 33, 34, then again, to your point, we're talking about Rome Odunze versus Ladd McConkey here.
Yeah.
If they can get a Ladd McConkey at 34, then I would say, okay, go take Bain at 4, and now you're done at edge rusher.
So thinking about these 3 positions, I think the 2 that you wouldn't necessarily be able to replace is wide receiver, which I think is a major position of need, and I think they're in a position where you're okay taking a wide receiver at 4, but you may be able to trade back to 8 and still be in a position where that's good if you're trying to take advantage of a team who needs an edge. I'm a little like, I think Jeffrey Simmons is someone you can build an entire defense around. And I think you really start digging deep into some of the best defenses of the league right now. They have marginal or above average edge rushers that are built around crazy defensive tackles. You think about the Patriots, Milton Williams, Barmore. You think about the Seahawks, Leonard Williams. I got confused with Milton and Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. You think about the Eagles. You got Davis, and you got Ajomo, and you got Carter. So I think that's the place to build that defense, and we've seen solid build defenses around Q Williams, for example. So I'm a little less. I think you can kind of wait to get an edge rusher. The key item for them, I think, is if they do want to reinvest in the offensive line. They did spend a lot of money there, but in order to get a true tackle, you have to usually draft them and keep them on your team. And I think the wide receiver position, which we just outlined about McConkey, actually exists at the tackle position this year. A guy named Jennings Dunker out of Iowa showed a lot at the Senior Bowl. There was multiple tackles in the Senior Bowl that I think are probably a little closer to Spencer Fano out of Utah and Maui Goa out of Miami. And I think the real place where you can either take a shot at 4 or trade back from 4 to 8, get more capital in the second, then try to address the edge rushing position with someone who's not as, highly touted as Bailey or some of these other guys. Or you flip it, you get the edge or the wide receiver position higher, and then you can wait for the tackle. I think that's the way this should go. I do think there's a bigger gap in the wide receiver than the edge position, though. And so I do think that a target of Mekhi Lemon, maybe if you do want to trade back to the 8 to 10, frankly, I think he's going to move up the consensus big board, which there's data behind that of why you really shouldn't draft someone who moves up the consensus big board. But I think he's the certified wide receiver 1. I think he fits Dayball's scheme great because he's a real target earner, or he was at USC. We saw Malik Neighbors be able to maintain a high level of target share and be really successful in the offense of Brian Daboll before. I like Mekhi Lemon as one of the top guys in the draft. You look at Cardinal Tate, more of a vertical threat. You look at Jordan Tyson, more of a separator. I think the high level options at wide receiver are a better move in the first round for the Titans in particular, but I can understand going with an edge rusher. I think the wide receiver talent is slightly higher and more proven than the edge rushing talent in the first round.
Okay, give me the comps on the wide receivers. So, for instance, because it sounds like you at 4 would stick and pick Mekhi Lemon. I
would feel substantially better about trading back and trying to.
Nobody's going to trade up.
Okay, so no one's going to get a trade up. If you're telling me I have to draft at 4, and I would probably pick an edge rusher over. So you would pick Ruben Bain. If you were a big Ruben Bain guy. Yeah, I would pick Bain or Bailey probably.
Okay, for Salah's scheme, who do you think's better, Bain or Bailey?
You look at what he's done with Bryce Huff. You look at what he did with, Will McDonald to a certain degree. I think Bailey as a speed rusher off the edge will be more productive. I do think that he would be able to use Bain in a 4-down front and move him kind of all over the place. So I think it's a toss-up. I think Bain's better. I would prefer to see Bain, especially when you have the central element of your defense in Jeffrey Simmons, and you can kind of move around that guy and play. I do think both are good. I like Bain better.
Okay, so if you're on the clock at 4, you're trying to trade out, you're trying to trade within the top 10 so you can still get the receiver. Probably Lemon's the guy you seem to like.
Yep.
If you have to stick and pick, it's going to be Bain.
Yep.
Let's say you move to 8, and so you pick up a second, and you move to 8. And I don't have the chart in front of me to say whether or not that would be good, but let's just say you move to 8, Bain's off the board, Bailey's off the board, then you go Lemon, and you're cool with the extra second that you picked up.
I definitely think so, because I think we're talking like detailed about positions. I think the Titans are in a position where you draft the best available player when it comes down to it.
Well, I think they should pretty much be like that all the time anyway.
Exactly, 100%. And so they're just lucky to be lucky. You're not actually lucky. It's called the loser's curse. When you're drafting high, it's because you're not very good.
Right.
And because you're not very good, you're in a position where these players may not make an impact because they will be expected to do a lot. So they're lucky in quotes, but they're in a position where you evaluate who the best available is. You evaluate what you think the difference between that player and the next best player is. And if it's tiny and you can get 2 players that you think you can roll the dice on, it's probably a little bit better. So I would be comfortable with moving back, maybe grabbing a wide receiver, and then adding another position, particularly across either the offensive line, defensive line, that you feel good about. And here's why as well. I'm talking about multiple defensive tackles. There are guys you can get. Maybe there's 20 guys in this interior defensive line class that I think can be impact players. Lee Hunter was a standout. He's sitting around the 30s or 40s, and he's a true nose guard. So they
already have that. They have Sweat.
Yeah, that's a good point. But
now some people say he doesn't fit solid scheme anyways. I don't know enough about it to be able to tell you if he does or if he doesn't. Yeah. And he's lazy and he's fat. So that's a concern, which they knew coming out, and it didn't matter to Rand Carthon because he was an idiot. So, I mean.
It's you saying it, not me. Oh, but it's a good point. Like, Lee Hunter is more of a nose guard.
Rand Carthon was kind of an idiot.
You have Sweat, but, like, if you can get multiple defensive tackles in a defense, you do it every time because that is what is shutting offenses down right now. Because,
I want to get to this with you. Sam Brookhouse is with us from Sumer Sports. He is the lead data scientist at the analytics company, Sumer Sports. I begged the Titans, begged them to sign Sam Darnold in free agency. In fact, I would have traded probably the top of the 4th round pick, which ended up being Chim DK, who was a good returner. He's not, not a great receiver this year, but a good returner and showed promise. But I would have traded the top of the 4th round pick to Minnesota in exchange for a franchise tagged Sam Darnold. And then I would have given Sam Darnold a 4-year, $160 million contract. I would have guaranteed the first 2 years. I would have essentially guaranteed the first 3. He would have signed it. His contract with Seattle is nothing like that. So I would have given him far more money than he got from Seattle. He really wouldn't have had a choice because he would have been on the tag anyways. And if he was as good as he was this year, I'd tag him again. So he wouldn't have really had the option, to go somewhere else. Like people say, well, he wouldn't have wanted to come to the Titans, which I, by the way, know was not true. He did want to come to the Titans, but regardless, I wouldn't have even given him the option. That's how much I like Sam Darnold. Yeah. And then I would have traded the first pick to the Giants. The reported offer was 4, 34, and they're 1 and they're 2 this year. And that would have been for Cam Ward.
Yeah.
Titan fans are convinced that they made the right call by taking Cam Ward. The idea is if Mahomes is there, Allen's there, Lamar is there, you take the quarterback, and there were 3, 4, 5 number 1 picks. How many number 1s is Burrow worth if Cincinnati was going to trade him? 4 or 5?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay, so that's their sentiment. I look at it like this. Over the next 3 years, because if you're a general manager, you're a coach, that's really the only tenure you have. Is at maximum 3 years. If you swing and miss at quarterback, you're fired.
Yep.
So over the next 3 years, who's going to be better? I don't think that Cam Ward is ever going to be as good as Sam Darnold was last year. I also don't think Cam Ward is ever going to be as good as Sam Darnold is right now. All of you geeks tell me that Sam Darnold is no good. And the league said that Sam Darnold was no good because nobody wanted him other than Seattle. Seattle was the only team that wanted him. And they didn't even give him a really good contract. Minnesota didn't want him. They got an analytics guy as their general manager who just got fired because of it.
Yep.
So when you parse the data, Darnold plus the picks or Cam, am I wrong for thinking everybody who doesn't think Darnold plus the picks was the way to go? Kind of stupid.
So in retrospect, you're definitely correct.
Okay.
Let's take where we thought we were at the time. So where we thought we were at the time in terms of the Vikings, let's start there. The bet that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah made that if we close our eyes and don't read The Athletic or don't read Wide Left or any of these other places, like
the duck theory, what does it look like? Like, is it quacking like a duck? Does it look like a duck? Then it's a duck.
Yeah, the bet that he made in the data, and let's only evaluate on that, was that Sam Darnold was the 18th best quarterback in expected points added per play last year in an offense that you believe KOC, Kevin O'Connell, is one of the best play callers in the league.
Sure, they smelled their own farts. They thought they were the reason that they were successful,
100%.
And that Sam was not the reason that they were successful.
100%. And so you ask yourself, the team we have, if we play the distribution and he remains JJ McCarthy's the 18th to 20th best quarterback, we will probably have a 13-win season or a 12-win season, which is a touchy in the data, but fair. We'll take it, a 10-win season. And they actually did end up winning a lot of games with terrible quarterback play. But you look on the other side, Sam Darnold was the 15th best player across the season in expected points added per play. And then you have the Seahawks in an extremely same situation where their defense is extremely good.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole offense is based around one wide receiver. Their offensive line play, whether it's health, whether it's whatever, is not all that great. And that team makes the Super Bowl. So let's start with that. That's what got Kwesi canned, basically. Was sure. He took a bet, and that bet really wasn't all that wrong if you look at their final record. But it did not look good because the Seahawks are in.
See, I completely disagree. I think it was a terrible bet because they had a 14-win quarterback.
Yeah.
They got rid of the 14-win quarterback. They won 9 games. The 14-win quarterback went to a 10-win team and won 14 games and is in the Super Bowl. And I think they won 14 games instead of 10 games because of Sam Darnold. Fun fact, the Seahawks last year missed the playoffs. Do you know why they missed the playoffs? They missed the playoffs because they were tied with the Rams at 10-7.
Yeah.
On December 22nd, Sam Darnold went into Seattle and beat them. Yeah. You know, I think he threw for like 303 touchdowns. He had a comeback fourth quarter game-winning drive. He is the reason Seattle didn't make the playoffs last year. Seattle brings him aboard. Seattle's in the Super Bowl. He throws for 364 and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I think you got to give credit where credit's due, and you nerds don't want to do it. You don't want to do it.
I don't, because like the reason why this team is so good is the defense. And moreover, when I talked about how we evaluate the relationships between everything, Jackson Smith-Njigba is having a record-breaking season. Like I told you that he was the offensive player of the year.
Wasn't that good before Sam Darnold got there.
Or was Geno Smith?
He is Jerry Rice right now. The way he's playing, and I don't throw that around like
no, you're 100% right.
But he is playing like Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
And he didn't play like Jerry Rice before Sam Darnold showed up. Because last year, everybody told me Sam Darnold was no good because he had Justin Jefferson.
It's 2 really good people to have.
So, but nobody thought coming into the year that JSN was on Justin Jefferson's level. And now he's Jerry Rice.
I'm holding strong on this. I'm still hesitant, but let's bring it back to the Titans because I think this will
just tell all the people right there. Jared Stillman was right. That's what I want to hear. That is
Jared. Okay.
That is the teenager in me that is saying like, I just want people to say I was right. That's all I feel.
With regards to the picks and how we felt about Dart and Sanders and Shuck, who I didn't necessarily like, but you know, he didn't get sacked a lot. He actually did get sacked a lot this year, but he scrambled more. So it was okay. With how we felt about the quarterbacks, I think you're right. I think you take the picks and you get Sam Darnold. At the time, the problem was at the time, we didn't know what Sam Darnold what his value was in the market value. He's on an extremely good contract.
It's a great contract.
It's crazy.
You said we didn't. Well, I didn't know that nobody was going to want him, which is what happened.
Oh, no. And I thought I was under the impression that
somebody was going to pay him $48 million a year, and because that's what I would have done.
Exactly.
I would have given him $160 million.
And that would still be good value.
It's great value. Yeah. Again, the top of the quarterback market is $60 million,
right?
And I'm talking about $40 million. Like that's good. Like that is a great deal. And I think it does make a difference when people say, "Well, Seattle has a good team." Well, they're not paying their quarterback $60 million.
It's an excellent point.
Now, when they have to pay Smith-Njigba, then it'll get a little, hairy over there.
Yeah, because he's going to be. I mean, we have Mike Parsons at 47 APY right now. We have.
And you think Smith-Njigba will be a record breaker because he's due after this year?
He's going to be the offensive player of the year.
Last one for you quickly. Why does CJ Stroud suck now? What does the data say?
It's an excellent point
because he sucks.
Yeah, and here's what we look for when we're evaluating quarterbacks. We're looking for changes in the probability of how they're evaluating their dropbacks and things changing and with the context. Okay, so the Texans evaluate last year. He's getting sacked all the time. Okay, well, let's get rid of Laramie Tunsil because even though he was good in all the data, it didn't even affect the rest of the offensive line. The offensive line was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
CJ Stroud has a high sack rate, is losing a lot of expected points added on that. We move him over to Kaylee's offense with a restructured offensive line. All of a sudden, the offensive line is slightly above average, and his sack rate's low. He was a top 10, top 15 guy in sack rate, and it still looks bad. So I do think there is an element of that. This is who CJ Stroud just always was. And
that CJ Stroud has always sucked.
Yeah, and that in the first year, it was just a perfect storm scenario where you get Nico Collins coming in, you got Tank Dell, who's playing extremely well. He ends up getting hurt, and he was able to get the ball to them. That offense at the time, people didn't really have a beat on it with Bobby Slovic, and you're running the outside zone, you're running a lot of play action, stuff like that. The second year, it catches up with them. They're not passing a ton over expected. Teams are loading up. Teams are blitzing a ton, and so if someone's saying, explain to me why CJ Stroud is so good, he did the thing that was supposed to help him out. The sack rate came down, and it still did not look good. That being said, in the aggregate, was he that bad over the course of the season? Not particularly. He was still a slightly above average quarterback in terms of his production, but the turnovers are killer. And you look at the turnovers typically, and that is a thing that can be pretty variable over the course of a career. But the turnovers and the ball security is bad. I think for whatever reason, I don't know if it was caused by the coaching. I don't know if it's who he is, but that ball security has to get better. And the decision-making was just not there either.
Last one for you, Sam Brookhouse with Assumer Sports. Is Liam Cohen in Jacksonville that good? Or was it, like you said about the Texans with Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud, just a perfect storm of a year for Jacksonville?
I think from a personnel perspective, a lot of things worked out for them this year. They functionally, by drafting Parker Washington and trading for Jacoby Myers, fixed one of the biggest problems in football, which is what we call the third receiver problem. Eric Eager's been on the show. He kind of wrote the book on this, where people always think, oh, we need a number one and number two. No, really what you need is a number three. And they had three quite good ones as the season went on.
Sure.
And in BTJ plays a different role. All of a sudden, he starts producing vertically at the end of the year. You got Jacoby working in the middle. You got Parker Washington, who becomes a slightly larger, maybe less well-regarded version of Amon-Ra St. Brown in that offense. Their run game was explosive, but they were not running a ton over expected. And I think that's why they were able to keep up in that playoff game as well. And so when you really break it down, I think Liam Cohen's for real. I think he does the things, play action, motion, passing a little bit over expected, getting Trevor Lawrence involved in the run game, which was not a thing that was really happening prior, in encouraging him to scramble, having him complete easy passes over the middle, which people, think is a given all the time. It's a little hard. It's like the 3-pointer. You back them up a little bit, but you have the skill, you have the technique to get it there. You get it to Parker Washington over the middle. So I think a lot of that was Liam Cohen. I think he's for real.
Okay, Sam Brookhouse, Sumer Sports. Always good to see you, buddy.
This was fun, man. I love it.
This was fun, as always. Again, the nerds. They say Cam Ward's not that good. They also say CJ Stroud not that good. So great show today in the books. Again, remember to like and subscribe. And again, I could go and nerd out with Sam for forever on all the different stuff. Later in the week, Caroline on the program, Kaylin Kaler from ESPN. She is the pool reporter for the Seahawks. She will be on the program later in the week. I believe Keith Bullock will be on the program later in the week. And we do have a special Stillman and Company announcement and Stillman and Company nugget that we've kind of hinted at. But I think we're going to make it official. We're going to share it with you all coming up. And by the way, let me say this. For you people out there, now you people have been very good to me as far as my weight is concerned. I mean, it's something that I certainly think about all the time, and I try to get better, and I have my good days and I have my bad days. Boston fans just were lighting my ass up as far as my weight was concerned. But I say this because last night we went to dinner out here at the Super Bowl, and it was me and Hutton and Withrow, and they was some PR people that they knew. They were there, and then Keith Bullock was there, and Donovan McNabb was there with us. And I was sitting next to Donovan McNabb, great guy. And we were at an Italian restaurant, and we both wanted the chicken, but I also wanted some pasta, and he wants pasta. And I ate as much as Donovan McNabb last night, and I'm 5'8", and I should not be eating as much as Donovan McNabb. Donovan McNabb is big. Like, he is big, and he's obviously tall. I mean, the guy was the third pick in the draft at quarterback. I mean, he's an NFL player. I'm me. So we're going to have to hit the treadmill again here at some point today or something. because last night I ate like a fatty. All right, that's it for us. Like and subscribe. We will see everybody tomorrow here from the Super Bowl. Put on your notifications when videos drop. Again, we'll put it out there, Stillman and Company, right here on 440 Sports, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And by the way, let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I want to make sure I do that because they are so good to me. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. They are the presenting sponsor of this program. They've been in business since 1990. They are family owned and operated. 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. That's where I go to book. Whenever Hiller comes into my home, that's exactly where I go. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value. They believe that when they care about others, everybody wins, and they take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Like and subscribe. We'll see everybody tomorrow here from the Super Bowl.